Hi everyone, Catherine and Kate here from Fantasy Fitnessing, and we are here to preview the Fittest in Captown for week 2 of the semifinals. So, quick thing first, we're going to kick off going through the field strength stuff, how many games athletes, past semifinal athletes, top athletes from the open, quarterfinals, and then a few of our stats about the field as a whole. And then we're going to get into some fun facts, what we're watching for, and some picks for the games tickets and some dark horses. So kicking it off, looking at the field. There are 2 men that have been to the games in the past, and there are 4 women with games experience. Then looking at kind of returning semifinal athletes, both men and women have like half the fields coming back. 15 men and 17 women competed last year in a semifinal. Definitely the women's side, not all of them were the fittest in Captown because of area moving around the world issues, but that's great to see. And then looking who performed the best in the open, the top 5 athletes on the men's side in the open would have been Keelan Henry, Darren Zernamer, Ruan Dubnaj, Mohamed Alamda, and Jason Smith. And on the women's side, it would have been Lee Kiruz, Angelique Conway, Christina Lividakakis, Michelle Moran, and Georgia Aries. Then into who did the best in quarterfinals. This is looking at the worldwide rank. Keelan Henry, Jason Smith, Ruan Dubnaj, Darren Zernamer, and Ruan Portiger. And on the women's side, Michelle Moran, Michelle Basnet, Lee Caruz, Dina Swift, and Anique Spies. So there were a couple athletes kind of differing between those 2 lists. So it's kind of fun to see who did the best in the first couple competitions of the season. We looked at the fields as a whole in their worldwide quarterfinal rank, and the women's field would have been 9th. And then as soon as we narrowed it down to advancing spots like their games ticket and 3 last chance spots, they went down to 10th. And then narrowing it down to that top athlete in the semifinal, they were also 10th. So one of the weaker fields as a whole, but I also like the number of athletes that are coming back. So it's building, it's coming, and it'll get there. And then the men is the same. As a field as a whole, they were 9th, and then with the advancing spots, 10th, and the game spot was 10th. So the top end just isn't quite the top end yet, but we will see how this year goes. And then kicking it over to Dave for what things you're watching and some random fun facts.
Yeah, so looking at this, I guess both fields for this semifinal, I think kind of the big storyline is if anybody is able to kind of dethrone the kings and queens from last year going into this competition. So you have Jason Smith on the men's side, was at the games last year after winning Fittest in Captown. He's been to the games 3 or 4 times, I believe. Or it just looks like a couple times. So, definitely see him coming through. He won quarterfinals last year, won Fittest in Captown, won quarterfinals again this year. So he's had a good season so far. Just has thrown in a bit of a wrinkle into his training plans this year. He did compete in a boxing match at some point, I think between quarterfinals and semifinals, or it could have been the open and quarterfinals. So interesting to see that type of activity mixed into the middle of the CrossFit season. But again, at 38 years old or in his 38 season, it might be time he could be looking at other things. So to me, he's still the favorite. But then I think there's a couple guys that are trying to close the gap right behind him. First guy I'm looking at to chase down Jason Smith, Ruan Dubnaj. He was 3rd at quarterfinals last year, then 2nd at Fittest in Captown, and then followed it up with a 2nd in quarterfinals this year. So is still progressing it. Although kind of an interesting factor, looking at the ages of all these qualifiers, it's Smith is 38, Dubnaj is 33, and then kind of the next guy we're looking at here, Keelan Henry, he's 29. So it's interesting to see that on both the men's and women's sides, the age of the athletes in this quarterfinal are significantly higher than what you would see anywhere else. but yeah, so I guess moving back to Kaylin Henry, so he was second at quarterfinals last year, and third in quarterfinals this year. Henry's really the home run hitter of the group, so he had 3 event wins out of 5 at quarterfinals this year, and he came back with 2 event wins at quarterfinals last year. So really is the guy that is going to win an event or kind of go up in flames trying to get there. So all these guys were quite competitive. One thing I did find interesting as well is that all of them have made a big jump in terms of their average finish at quarterfinals. So when you look at Jason Smith, he had an average finish of 13.2 at quarterfinals last year, but had an average finish of 6th this year. Duvenage had an average finish of 15.8 last year at quarterfinals, 7.2 this year. And then Henry was 13.6 and 7.8 this year as well. So again, we see a lot more people coming back from this, but these guys, from a quarterfinal standpoint, were definitely leaps and bounds ahead of kind of the pack there. And then
and that's interesting with so many people sort of coming back that they still moved up that much, even though at least 50% of the field was still competing.
Yeah, definitely. To knowing that at least 15 of the individuals who finished in the top 30 last year finished in the top 30 this year, but to see such a big jump in terms of average finish, just looking at Duvenage's profile, last year he had 1 top 5. This year he had 4. To see kind of this top bunch all make that big leap, pretty interesting. And then kind of a bit of a darker horse on this group, Richard Bolt. He finished 4th in quarterfinals. He's really kind of the steady as she goes type of guy. So he had an average event finish of 8.6 in quarterfinals, but didn't actually have any top 5. So he did have 4 top 10. So it was all within that same type of placement finish there. So interesting to see compared to kind of the home run hitter of Henry. Looking at the women's side, Michelle Bassinet, she made it the games last year after the winning at Fittest in Captown. This year, she actually finished 2nd in quarterfinals behind Michelle Morand, although it sounds like she had food poisoning or some sort of illness over the quarterfinal weekends, which did limit her performance there. I still think, she is the favorite going into it, especially because she does have, the age advantage on a lot of the women we're going to talk to being 25. Michelle Morand just mentioned, so she ended up winning quarterfinals this year. Did it without an event win, but did have 4 top 5 finishes on her way to winning. She was 3rd last year in both Captown and quarterfinals, so an improvement this year, at least from a quarterfinals perspective. So we'll see what happens in Captown. Next athlete, which is really kind of interesting because I think she is late to CrossFit, is Lee Cruz. So she was 3rd in quarterfinals this year with an event win. But looking back, she was, 15th in quarterfinals last year. So big jump there. And then from the open last year, she was, 2200th and 45th, where this year she jumped up to 82nd in the overall leaderboard. So a huge improvement from her this year. So definitely someone to watch.
Yeah, she's someone that comes from a bodybuilding side of thing. So I think last year was her first time sort of dabbling in it. I saw some videos of her movements, definitely just figuring some of them out. So she's someone that I'm kind of excited to see, what did she manage to do last year? Because she can obviously focus and recover and do all that if you're competing in bodybuilding.
Another woman, Gemma Rader, so working out of CrossFit, as I believe in Dubai. So she was 4th. She had, a top 5 finish and 3 top 10 finishes. Finished 4th at quarterfinals last year, and so she is one of the women that didn't get to compete at Captown. So she was at German Throwdown where she finished 28th. So it'll be, again, to have her competing in person, it's really going to add some more challenge to the top of the field. Even if she isn't going to make the podium, she should be right there in the mix. And then really just adds competitiveness to the field, which will make for an interesting race. So the more top athletes in the race, the more chances are that someone will, sneak in there and, drop the leader down or drop the chaser down to make the races more interesting versus just having an elite trio that are just going to finish 1, 2, 3 in every event.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun if you have more people actually like pushing to win events and stuff.
Last year's runner-up in both quarterfinals in Fittest in Captown was Dina Swift. She was 5th in quarterfinals this year. And then one last athlete, Christina Lividakakis. So she is 25. So again, with Bassinet is one of the younger athletes in the field. Was 6th in quarterfinals, but did have a big jump from 16th last year. And she's an athlete that was at Torian last year, so didn't compete at Fittest in Captown. So again, really just bringing some more competitiveness to the mix. And I think from Bassinet in second to Lividakakis in 6th place in quarterfinals, there's only about 15 to 20 points separating that group. So at the very least, it should be a really competitive last heat, which will be exciting to watch. And then hopefully makes the races a bit more interesting, since you can't really send it in an event and put some people between you and the person you're chasing or person you're trying to pull away from.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought that the top end of the women's field was actually scattered last year. So it should be a lot more fun to watch this year.
Yeah, it is. But again, just touching on the age piece, only 2 of those top 6 women are under 30, which again, it's interesting to see kind of just how late the African women are getting into CrossFit or competitive CrossFit compared to some of the other semifinals where we're seeing multiple athletes under 18 years old.
Yeah, hopefully a great show at the Fittest in Captown will bring some more young guns to the sport. So yeah, there's some things to watch. I guess from that we can probably pick who you're going to put, but we're going to make you commit to who you're going to put on the top. And then I don't know if everyone we've listed is already the dark horses, or what are you going to do? Let's start with the men.
Yeah.
Who's on top?
All right. So I think Jason Smith is going to take it again this year. He was the only man who finished in the top 10 out of all 5 events in quarterfinals. So I'll give him another year for the victory there. And then kind of my dark horse, or biggest competition, we'll call it, Kaylin Henry. I think just he does have kind of that home run potential. So if he can win, a couple events and just limit his losses this year, I think it could be a lot more competitive than potentially last year was.
Cool. I like it. And then on the women's side.
Yeah. And then on the women's side, like Michelle Bassinet to take it again for the repeat as well on the women's side. And then probably we'll take Lee Carews just as the biggest challenger to her. To see such a big jump in performance over the course of the last year, that it could, give her a lot of confidence. And then this probably she didn't do semifinals last year, so this maybe end up being her first in-person competition. So being on the competition floor just might give her that push she needs to get through. And then again, she does have potential to win some events there. So she might have that ability to
I like it. All right. So that is our preview for week 2 Fittest in Captown. We are going to be running salary cap and have the draft sort of games open for week 2. We're probably going to kick off those games on like the Saturday and Sunday of the week 1 semifinal. So as you're checking in with your leaderboard, checking your fantasy lineup on week 1, as the week 1 semifinals goes, the week 2 game will show up there. So start getting your lineup set early so you don't forget. And yeah, we're going to have Gooder sunglasses for the top 3 teams for week 2 as well. So yeah, make sure you are on fantasyfitnessing.com to set all your fantasy rosters. And follow us on Instagram at fantasyfitnessing for more stats and interesting facts as the semifinals play out. So we will see you on the leaderboard.